Welcome to ZBook's Successful Authors Podcast. And with me, I have a brand new author, the author of a #1 book called Starving Babies. Welcome, Dr. Kaleb Valdez.
Thank you, Eric. It's good to be here.
Yeah, that title is, I don't want to say killer, but it's a great title. So,
I have a love-hate relationship with it, I would say.
well, no, you
It
don't want
just
a
sounds
boring
awful.
title.
No, I wanted
Yeah.
something memorable and emotional, visceral.
Yeah, it's great. Before we get into your book, though, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a chiropractic physician. I have an interest in pediatric and pregnancy chiropractic. I've been practicing for about 5 years now, and I studied at Parker University in Dallas, Texas, and I currently practice in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Great, great. How's the weather in Utah right now?
It's very cold right now, so
Good,
40
good.
Fahrenheit right now. A
It,
little
it's
colder than I'm
getting
used to.
it's getting icy here in Germany, so we'll share in the misery a bit.
Yep, I
Yeah.
guess.
So, how does a chiropractor get into baby formula?
Well, I have been adjusting babies. Pretty much that's what got me into chiropractic. My
Mm.
niece was born with a genetic condition that chiropractic can help with. And at the time, I just thought we helped people have straight backs. I really didn't understand chiropractic when I started it. But as I got into it and I realized that we're really nervous system doctors, I work with the nervous system, and birth is a very traumatic experience for mom and baby. And so helping get their nervous systems regulated and firing on all cylinders and optimized after birth is my passion. And just recently here in the United States and pretty much around the world, we've had an infant formula shortage. And a lot of my patients have been asking me how they can feed their babies. What are some alternatives I can get besides what we offer on the store? Thankfully, the American government has recently allowed a lot of the European brands into our markets here, which they'd never previously done. And that gives us a lot of healthy alternatives that I could recommend some of the European brands for my parents to look into. Um, and I wanted to explore some alternatives of formula. But then as I kind of backed up and looked at the big picture, I thought, well, why did we ever stop breastfeeding? Why is that such a challenge or an obstacle? And what are some things that we could do to kind of restore power in the parents and in the mom if she chooses to breastfeed that child? There's so many benefits health wise for that. And I work with a special population of patients that has a condition, it's called Prader-Willi syndrome, that causes them to always feel hungry. And so starving babies was always on my mind of just how do we help these kids feel full, and how do we feed now not just the PWS kiddos, but all of these infants that are now facing formula shortages and food insecurity in the US. And so starving babies was born. And like I said, I have a love-hate relationship with the title. It just sounds awful, but when
No,
you
no,
read the
keep
book,
it, keep it.
okay.
I think you should
I'm,
keep
I'm
it.
kind of attached to it at this point. I'm a little committed to it.
No, you need
But
a shocker. You need a shocker
yeah,
for a
something that
title.
just, I mean, that's something you don't forget. And
Yeah.
it's easy to tell people that's what the name of the book is, and they go look it up. Some of the social media platforms have deplatformed me because they think I'm advocating for starving babies. And that's couldn't be further from the truth. I'm really just trying to draw awareness to the fact that kids are hungry and they're not starving for calories necessarily. Thankfully, most kids are just starving for connection. And we've disconnected so many parts of the birth process and the breastfeeding process that starving babies was my attempt to really grab their attention and say, hey, we have a formula crisis in this country, but it's also a breastfeeding crisis underlying that's pointing to a lot of different symptoms of a lot of different things that are going wrong that a lot of parents are waking up to now.
Well,
So that's what I wanted to
yeah,
address.
exactly. Let's get back. You hit the question, my main question, and I've had it for many years. So it's so appropriate that you're here now. I've been asking myself for many years, well, why did we get off or get onto formula? Where does that come from? Why?
Yeah. So, and I was shocked. I learned so much writing this book
Mhm.
because when I started this process, this was in July of this year, I just knew that there was a shortage going on. And
Mhm.
I looked at the history of the formula companies and the industry as a whole. And you can see how they very methodically and meticulously and they have a strategy to move us to more dependence on their product than ever before. And so I go back 120 years, I mean, even further. We're looking at ancient Egypt, and we're talking about how they did things in the Civil War era and stuff that you wouldn't think would really factor into modern day approach to breastfeeding. There's some social stigma around a lot of that. And it's probably different in different parts of the world. You know, I looked at different cultures. There's different religious taboos or encouragements towards different things. The World Health Organization has some excellent guidelines that are out. And for the most part, the European Union really upholds those. We have something called the Code, which is the International Code for Breastfeeding. And there's a lot of rules that we've all agreed to play by that I just want the Americans to know, hey, your government doesn't play by these rules. These companies do not follow these international standards. So you can't always rely on them to do what you think is happening. And that's where Starving Babies, I hope, is starting these conversations. And thanks to, you know, shows like this one and other conversations that we're having, book talks and speaking engagements that I've been able to do since publishing this, I look forward to engaging in that conversation with more and more of my patients and the types of parents that are looking to alternatives and going back to the natural way that we've always done
Mm.
things. And we're seeing a
So,
lot of those making a comeback, which is very encouraging.
yeah, that's great. I was reading your book, believe it or don't. And so let's go to the beginning. Was it an evil corporation? Was it in the 1950s? Where was this momentum to get on the formula?
You know, I don't think it was one specific actor or one pivotal moment. I think it's been a series of small battles that are won and lost every day in form of government oversight or legislation or the lack thereof. The U.S. doesn't offer maternity leave or certain benefits that are kind of standard in the first world right now. There's definitely a cultural shift away from breastfeeding and some of that stereotype. I think there's some very deeper conversations that are driving that stigma. But I do see that there's a lot of these trends towards we're trying to outsource health. Basically, we want somebody else to take care of all of this stuff for us, and we need to realize that moms are the ones that are the best positioned to help these babies. And if we can just support healthy, connected birthing practices at the get-go, we don't have to address all these sicknesses and deficiencies later on, because nature, as it stands, doesn't need any real help from us. It just needs no interference.
Mhm.
And right now, especially in this country, with the environmental toxins that we deal with the trauma of the American birthing practices, and with just the cultural pressure and the social media marketing that moms are facing every day, there's so many things that are stacked against them that a lot of them are beginning to wake up to and looking for ways to get back to connected life and connected living with birthing and breastfeeding. So I
Yeah.
wanted Starving Babies, despite its ominous title, I want it to be very encouraging and positive and feel like a warm hug from a friend that you can trust, gives you information that you can consider. And then absolutely 100%, whether moms want to formula feed 100% from the get-go, whether they're hardcore about breastfeeding the entire 2 years, you know, and whatever their choice is and everything in between, I want them to feel supported and
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
valid in their decision.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to play devil's advocate because I have a friend of mine who says you um for example, we don't need milk, cow milk, right? The only milk you need is mother's milk. And
Yeah.
you only need to drink milk until whatever, let's say 2 years old, and then you don't need any kind of milk at all for the rest of your life. That's kind of extreme position, isn't it?
It is, but I've heard that, and I've heard everything in between. So that's not an uncommon position to take right now. The 2 year recommendation is what the World Health Organization and the European Union have agreed to as being the bare standard for breastfeeding. They recommend 6 months of exclusive breastfeeding, meaning no other liquids, not even water for baby until 6 month mark. And then you start introducing some simple foods and some other liquids and things, you know, healthy juice or something at that point. But you're continuing to supplement with breast milk until the second year. Now, the American Academy of Pediatrics and our CDC in this country, they just say 1 year, but still exclusive for the first 6 months. And we have a very, very shockingly low percentage of babies that are achieving that milestone there. But the evidence of what that breast milk is capable of doing for the immune system development, for the nervous system development, the endocrine system, all of these things are primed to be nourished by the ultimate superfood, which is breastfeeding event, initially.
Hmm.
Cow's milk, as I was looking through some other alternatives for these starving babies that, moms aren't able to find the sensitive formula that they need, or the particular brand that their baby prefers. I was looking at cow's milk and goat milk, and we've used donkey milk and all these other types of dairy products, but other human breast milk is actually the second best thing that we could have besides mother's milk. And so there's
Mm.
groups on Facebook, and wet nursing was kind of an antiquated practice. Back in the day, the Royals only did that.
Yeah.
But I think it's making a comeback as these moms join these groups and they find a donor, they get human breast milk supplied. That is what these small infant digestive systems are primed to receive. But I would agree, especially with the level of hormones and things that cow's milk has. Cow's milk has very large proteins in it that are hard to break down. They cause some gut inflammation and some problems like that. So I tend to agree. I don't drink a lot of dairy products now.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I
Well,
guess there's some truth to that, maybe.
so this is, right on topic because a lot of things are being disproven now, finally, 50 years later, like the food pyramid. Remember that food pyramid? And that was
Yeah,
just marketing. And back then, oh no, it's science or whatever they said. It's better for you.
right.
And it was pure lies. It was just marketing. It's what they wanted to sell at what rate they wanted to sell. And that's why I'm always wondering. So when did we get on the milk, the formula kick? Because I've heard from people said, oh, you have to have formula or the babies won't get what they need. It's like, wait a minute, I thought mother's milk is all they need, and so it's marketing. They got people
It's
believing
brilliant
here
marketing.
in Europe that they have to have mother's milk, the formula. And
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it. So what
Well,
do you think about it?
piggybacking off of that, you remember the Got Milk commercials in
Oh
the early
yeah,
90s,
yeah, a long time ago.
was it
Yeah,
full? We had posters that said, "Oh, it builds strong teeth and bones, and
yeah.
your hair and skin will be healthier." And
Mm,
I don't know that the science hasn't really borne that out too
mm,
well.
mm,
But yeah, to your question, there's a lot of misinformation in the pediatric world, in the neonatal care that's being recommended right now, because a lot of these formula companies, they're huge donors, especially in our country right now. I'm really not versed on the German pediatric education system for your medical doctors, but over here, these formula companies, they contribute millions of dollars to the American Academy of Pediatrics that makes all those recommendations. Until recently, there's a very common practice called medical detailing that I talk about in the book quite extensively, where these formula companies would take these pediatricians out. They'd take them to a ski resort for the day, or an all expense paid vacation. And of course, when they say we recommend our products and here's why, and here's our data, our studies, our research that we've done, here's what we want you to recommend, that's all that they know, because that's the only conversation that they've had access to during their medical training. And so those loyalties are built early on in their education. And I've had very well intentioned, very well meaning pediatric experts, medical doctors and nurses, that they believe wholeheartedly that mother is not making enough milk, or that mother's milk is, the baby's allergic to it, or it's low milk supply and they need to supplement. And when you supplement with that product, it gradually edges out the mother's natural supply, because babies will crave the high fructose sweeteners and the calorie dense fillers that are in this formula. Well over, I mean, it's like eating organic. We're supposed to do it, but it's hard to get them to be able to nurse there, and to have moms have that determination to stick to the breastfeeding process, because it is not an easy thing. I'm not speaking as a lactating person myself. I happen to be a male, and so have really no dog in this fight, other than to say, moms who choose to breastfeed, to formula feed, to pump, I think pumping is well overlooked. But those moms get it. They know what they're putting in their baby. They look for quality formula, and they should be able to trust the quality of the product that they're giving their babies, the safety of it. Europe has excellent manufacturing standards, and each country in Europe kind of has their own set of standards. So they're very localized. They're very intensively focused on the quality of what they're producing there. We have one or two major hubs for one or two major companies here, and they've been neglected. And we can't trust the safety of those products like we should be able to. And that was the first part of this book, was drawing attention to that problem. And then as we get going, saying, hey, here's some other options you could explore. But I just want you to feel supported and validated in your concerns and your frustrations and the obstacles that you're facing. And here's some alternatives that you can look at to help make that successful.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Unfortunately, America, well, many countries, not just America, but it is evolved into let the best lobbyist win, right? Whoever can lobby the best, whether it's good for you or not, or whatever, it's the best lobbyist will win in Washington, D.C. We know the government has been protecting the sugar companies in America, and maybe rightly so, but I was reading your book. Can you give us one of the stories about, like in the beginning, there was not infected, but contaminated or bacteria in the milk about not
Yeah.
necessarily about lobbyists, but that first story in the book was really interesting.
Right. So that's what the one of the most recent shutdowns was based on, this outbreak of the Chronobacter bacteria. And this type of bacteria lives almost exclusively in powdered dry infant formula. And we had an outbreak sometime last year, and it was reported, and no action was taken for months. And then finally, our Food and Drug Administration, our oversight agency, showed up on site. They found hundreds of violations of their standards and the agreed production facilities. And I want people to know that uh, here we have an agency that's constantly telling parents, don't make this at home because you might infect your child with a deadly disease and kill them. And it terrifies them. And then if you had any idea what was going on in these factories behind layers of lobbyists and legislation that's protecting those interests, and at the end of the day, they're not we're not any better for them having those standards or those agreements in place until we start taking action and we have more parents that are demanding accountability for that type of thing. So yeah, this outbreak shut down the factory production at one of our main hubs in a town called Sturgis, Michigan. And since then, we've had whistleblower reports coming out. We've had congressional hearings. There's been a big scrutiny of this one particular company, this one particular factory. But I want them to know this is a systemic problem that we've enabled to grow. And it's not just Chronobacter sakazakii, which is the strain that we're currently dealing with, but there's salmonella that usually goes in those same facilities. And we need to hold these companies to a higher standard because they've won the exclusive rights, whether you agree with that monopoly or not. They've won the exclusive rights to be producing this really valuable commodity that is the sole source of nutrition for some of the most fragile systems, nervous systems and digestive systems in our country. It's time to hold them to the accountability that they need to for the job that they have. That's the job, is produce very clean product and avoid these types of things. And when these outbreaks happen, as they inevitably will, nobody's perfect, but you need to have a system in place that can be accountable and clean up that act and recall the formula that you need to and make things right again. And that's where we just don't have that accountability currently in this country. And the shortage was so bad for so long that we started looking to other companies, even foreign companies, which I think are great. I have no problem with the manufacturing standards in countries like Germany and Ireland and places that we're getting our formula from now. I think that should have happened a long time ago. But again, we have the watchdogs that are protecting the monopoly of a few large American corporations that haven't been able to deliver on what the agreement was from the taxpayers.
Well, so it's not just yeah, lobbyists, but it's also getting uh, FDA to actually inspect these places. So what's
Mhm.
the what do you think? What's the solution here? It's probably just not one thing.
It's a number of things. Holistically, I think the US needs to step up to the plate with all the other developed countries in the world in adopting the international code for breastfeeding. We need to stop direct to consumer marketing for infant formula, because when your hospital is pushing a certain product onto a patient, of course they're going to believe their medical doctor that that's what they need. And every other country in the world, breastfeeding, we all say breast is best. We know that that is the mantra, but it's become so overutilized that now we ignore it. It kind of goes onto the back burner there. And we start
Yeah.
looking, comparing labels of sensitive formula versus soy-based versus, all these different options that are out there. And it's time to just get back to what we know works based on our research. And that is exclusive breastfeeding for the first bit. And there's always going to be mothers that struggle with establishing a supply. We get that. Those are the ones that need the infant formula, and they should be able to rely on a safe supply for that. And why is it that so many mothers are struggling with those types of with establishing supply? Those types of problems, I believe, is an accumulation of again, an FDA oversight problem, where we're allowing environmental toxins into our bloodstreams, into our water supply, into our foods. Since the late 1980s, our FDA has refused one compound, one chemical in our food production process. During that same time, the European Union has blocked over 1,500 chemicals from going into your foods. And we don't see those same supply problems over there. So if we can get back to toxin-free living and interference-free birthing, I think the success rate of natural breastfeeding is going to go way up. And that's going to save in the US, if we adopted that tomorrow, if 90% of our mothers tomorrow could wake up and feed their own babies, we'd have $13 billion of our medical infrastructure that would be alleviated. And I think that's great savings. That's
Wow.
not money that's going into these formula companies, unfortunately, and therein lies the rub. So
Yep, that's the rub. And I was just looking. Okay, so that was chapter 5, the hormone symphony, living in a toxic world. What did you say that what was that about the substances that we banned in the EU and America didn't ban? How many was that?
So the European Union has taken the approach that when in doubt, leave it out, basically. If we're not sure, if there's no safety information on the long-term uses of this, of what we call bioaccumulation, if these toxins are building up in our tissues and in our bloodstream over years and years, and some of these heavy metals are, and some of the pesticides that we use in this country, Mexico just took a very strong stand against glyphosate for Monsanto. They're kicking out a whole bunch of pesticide lines that contain this neurotoxin. And so those are the types of solutions that we should be taking seriously if we want to address what is termed body burden. If we're looking at the toxic load on certain systems, the endocrine system specifically here. And so the European Union has banned, hundreds and hundreds more every year because they're concerned that a lot of these things should not be in our products. The American FDA, the EPA, the USDA, they're very slow to act on these things. And with the speed that manufacturing science is cranking out all these preservatives, all of these dyes and detergents and scents, fragrances, we've never done those safety studies long term. We've never looked at the body burden, the burden that these are adding to mothers who are trying to establish a very sensitive neuroendocrine connection with that baby and with their breast milk supply. We don't look at those things, and so they go unchecked, and they are in our foods and in our water and in our environment so often. The clothes that we wear, the detergent we use on our clothes, we're steeped in toxins right now that are shutting down milk supply. They're decreasing fertility rates for men, and these are big questions, big problems that we really need to address.
Yeah. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I lived in the US, but so here they're not allowed to put anything in the water, and in the US they're still putting fluoride in the water, right?
Can you believe it? Yeah, here we are, and
But
we know
fluoride's
that
good. I
it
don't know anymore,
makes your teeth hard. Yeah. Well, you see what that does to the pineal gland in our brain and our kidneys, and it's time to join the 21st century, I think, as a nation.
Yeah. So they're
I'd settle
still
for the
putting
20th at
fluoride
this
in the
point.
water there.
They still are. They really are. I
Yeah.
just recently saw an article about a gentleman who he admitted after years of being the water's treatment specialist that he said, I've secretly not been putting fluoride in our water this whole time because I know it's bad for our people. And he's lauded as a hero, as rightfully in some circles, because he was saving
Yeah.
people from a acknowledged neurotoxin there. So I opt for fluoride free. We have special filters on our water, toothpaste, anything that comes in contact with those sensitive membranes in the mouth and the eyes. really have to be careful with what we're putting in our body, because those go straight to the bloodstream.
Yeah. So tell us about chapter 6, connected birth, the foundation of well-fed babies.
So this is kind of the crux of starving babies, because it all starts, we put a tremendous emphasis on pregnancy and labor and delivery right up to that moment. And then it's kind of like, good luck, mom. Here's some formula if you need it in the middle of the night, but we wish you best. And I love the European model. They will send midwives and lactation consultants there. Most moms have 5 days of feeding help and support and things like that. And there's increasingly a number of what we call baby-friendly hospitals that are committed to leaving moms and babies in contact and proximity with each other from birth, which is how it should be. That's how nature designed it. We see a huge number of mothers who struggle with postpartum depression. And sadly, that is more prevalent in moms who opt for a very heavily medicated birth, where their body is so disconnected. Literally, the epidurals we give, the fentanyl, these drugs that these moms are taking during labor and delivery to manage the pain, are also complicating the labor process. And the neuroendocrine system doesn't accept that we had a baby. The baby's alive. It needs me to feed it. It's crying. It needs connection. And so a lot of these moms, they'll have a baby, it's whisked away and washed, and all the tests are run and things away from the mother. And then she brings back this little stranger, and consciously she knows, oh, that's my husband, that's my doctor, that's my baby, that I just had. I'm in a safe place. Consciously she's saying that, but her nervous system and the central processing part of her brain, that very deep operating system, really doesn't accept that this is all happening just yet. It feels like it lost a baby. So now I have to make milk. You're telling me now I have to, connect and bond with this human. It's not ready to release oxytocin for that bonding hormone. It's struggling to keep that prolactin up to allow the milk production, the letdown reflex, and all of that. And so that disconnection is happening on such a visceral neuroendocrine level that she's just not able to step into motherhood in that connecting natural way that humans have always done it for years and years. We are in the experiment right now. This is the medical system that we have right now is not what we've done forever. And people look at like you're crazy if you advocate any other type of home birth or maybe a hospital midwifery or something other than we induce, we do a block, we do epidural, we do all of these interventions, and then you end up in a C-section. And if you don't do it that way, you're crazy. Well, those are the things that we want to reconnect and reestablish for mom, is those practices.
Yeah.
So chapter 6 is all about that. And there's always trade-offs, and sometimes I'm really grateful we have trade-offs. I'm so thankful we have emergency C-sections as a last resort. Those are saving lives. But the medical research shows us those are usually required about 10 to 12% of the time. And we have hospitals here in the US where 70-80% of their births are cesarean births. That is way overprescribed, overtreated. It's the most common medical procedure that we're doing in this country now is a C-section delivery. And there's always trade-offs. So if we're looking at all these other trends, we're worried about breastfeeding success rates. Well, let's look at what we've changed in the last 50, 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, and see
Yeah.
how we can get back to those basics.
Yeah, it's the cult of convenience. I've heard of people scheduling their C-sections, So
Yes. And you look at that, sometimes there's a big uptick in C-sections that happen right before a doctor goes off duty or right before a major holiday when he's getting ready to take vacation. Those are the best times for the doctor to have the baby be delivered. Insurance billing cycles, those see a big spike. That's the best time for the hospital to bill those procedures out. So they schedule them. And I had just a recent conversation. So we said, oh yeah, it was an emergency C-section. They told me to come back on Friday for my emergency C-section. I said, that's not an emergency. If that was an emergency, 90 seconds, you'd be in that operating room and they get that baby out. What you had was a conveniently scheduled procedure. And that comes with trade-offs. And some moms are going to opt for that. And that's okay. That's their prerogative. They have medical freedom. They should be able to make that decision, but they should do it knowing that if you say yes to this, it's going to be really hard biologically, scientifically, to say yes to these other things that you may want, but are no longer able to do now. So
Well, yeah, it makes you question what is progress, right? And you're always hearing about progress, right? And we don't want to go back. Well, what if change or the progress isn't actually good?
Yeah, or who is it good for? Who's
Yeah.
benefiting from this progress? And I'm hoping it's the babies and the mothers that are delivering them. But
This is a really cool topic. I'm really glad you're here. So, can you just summarize again, the problem and how to solve it? Because it's really important, actually.
yeah, um, we've been facing for months, off and on, severe infant formula shortages in this country, and that really woke me up to the idea of why aren't we breastfeeding our babies anymore, and why is it so hard for so many parents to establish a supply and to, you know, to stay connected with their babies through birth and through breastfeeding. We have postpartum depression. We have all kinds of disorders and obstacles that we didn't see with the old way of doing things. And so starving babies is about entering that conversation and discussing with mothers the trade-offs here and making sure that they're informed that if I choose this route, these are the things that I'm leaving on the table. And that's a choice they have to make, and we have to respect that decision. But I want them to do it knowing some of the benefits that are being left behind in many instances. And starving babies was just my attempt at beginning this conversation. I work with babies as a chiropractor, doing neonatal adjustments, and sometimes I'll be there through labor and delivery. I'll adjust mom while she's laboring, and then as soon as the OB catches the baby, clears out things, they'll hand it to me, and I'll do the first adjustment. By a
How,
chiropractor.
how do you
Uh,
adjust a baby? They don't crack, do they?
Hey, don't crack at all. No, it's very, very different from what you or I, experience with a chiropractic adjustment. They're mostly cartilage, and you can just see that vibrant little nervous system that wants to fire and grow and thrive. But a lot of times it's just stuck in this cycle of stress and disconnection. And so I'm turning on the lights there with just very gentle pressure. I'm moving tiny little segments, fractions of a millimeter in some instances, and just feeling where there's stress along that nervous system and that spine. And just little alignments like that, as they're being pulled and pushed and squeezed through that birth canal, there's a lot of trauma that happens to those little tiny structures. So just putting things back in working order and really turning on the lights, for that nervous system to be able to grow and be in a growth mindset rather than protection, because they can't be in protection and growth at the same time. So they have to know that they've arrived safely, they're connected with mom, there's this little micro environment of her body heat and her skin to skin contact and her milk that puts that body at ease and says, okay, this is the human that built me, I know where I'm at, I don't care what else is going on around me, strange guy there that's pushing on my back, that's fine, but at least we get them into that growth relaxation mode. They sleep better, they eat constantly, they poop, all the things that babies are supposed to do. They can do it so much easier, and a lot of them they sleep right through the adjustment. It's so gentle and so specific. And moms aren't worried about acid reflux and constipation, and failure to thrive is a very common popular diagnosis in this country of, we don't know why your baby just doesn't want to grow. Well, it's because it's been stuck in this protection mentality for who knows how long. So
That is a topic in itself. But
yeah.
before we go there, how do you learn this stuff? Baby
So
chiropractic.
I in the US, we have 4 years of graduate school, that it goes into just general chiropractic. And then there's special certifications and postdoctorate work that you can do in pediatric neurology, developmental neurology, and pediatric adjusting. You learn a lot about neurological reflexes and how things are, because babies can't tell you where they hurt. And most of the time they don't hurt. They have stress in their nervous system. They're not coming in because they tweaked their back at work or they have headaches or anything like that. Those are old people problems. A lot of these babies are just stressed, and it manifests as eczema of an overactive immune system, or things that you wouldn't associate with the nervous system. Once we get that nervous system cleared out and working like it's supposed to, most of those symptoms drop off themselves,
Hmm.
as babies do what they've always done for millennia without
Hmm.
interference.
So,
So
yeah, you said something that I'm into also, this abundance mindset. So, how does that apply to babies again?
abundance mindset, I think as an adult, that's just a growth mindset. That's a proactive, I'm in a safe place, I'm where I need to be, I'm doing what I need to be doing. And our bodies respond to that. Every single cell and tissue in your body is constantly checking in with your brain and your nervous system saying, okay, are we safe? Are we growing? Are we thriving? Are we doing what we're meant to be doing? And cells respond to that on a chemical microbiological level. Babies are the same way, of course. Even dogs and horses, you'll see them getting adjusted on the internet, and it puts them in this growth mindset, this abundance mindset, because we can't be in protection, we can't be playing defense and scarcity mentality while we're trying to grow and evolve past that. So the adjustment speeds up the ability of the nervous system to adapt to its environment, because every cell and tissue in the body takes its cue from that system. Dr. Bruce Lipton has a fascinating book called The Biology of Belief that is a big philosophy cornerstone for me, talking about this very concept. And I think for me, that's why the chiropractic adjustment helps me as an individual evolve and adapt to my environment. And
Man,
so
you're
that's what
getting me all motivated to go to a chiropractor, man.
good. Well, good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm a
Did
believer. I
did
definitely see the benefits for me.
did you see the, now that I can't get it out of my mind now, did you see the guy do an adjustment on his Rottweiler in YouTube with where he's got his head, you know,
I've seen so many adjustments like that. I bet.
and then the dog's reaction? That video is
What
going
did the dog
viral
do
right
after
now.
that?
Yeah. The guy
Because
had
that for
just,
me, that's what
yeah,
convinced me that chiropractic was not a placebo. Because horses, they don't know that they're supposed to,
yeah.
respond to that kind of a thing. Or that, was it the Rottweiler? Does he run around really fast after the
No,
adjustment?
no, no. The guy has his head. He's doing, I don't know how chiropractors do
Just
that.
something.
He's doing his head and then knack, and then the dog just looks at him. It's just hilarious. It's
That's
hilarious.
awesome. Yeah, that's what I think. Okay, you're doing something to that animal's nervous system, and
Yeah.
if you look at the data afterwards, boy, that it's a good something that's happening there.
Well, it was his Rottweiler. I don't know if another one would have bit him. Or I wouldn't do that to a Rottweiler
Yeah, I
anyway.
don't. I'm not an animal chiropractor. I leave that to my chiropractic friends who have that certification and
Yeah.
that expertise.
Yeah.
And in the same token, I don't recommend that you just take a baby to any chiropractor, because I would not adjust a Rottweiler if I didn't know what I was doing. I also wouldn't feel confident adjusting a baby if I wasn't trained specifically on that
Mm.
technique. So
Yeah.
find somebody who knows what they're doing with those adjustments, and it's
Yeah.
amazing to see what happens when you get that
Yeah, it
nerve
is. I
firing.
maybe you could help us dispel some of the myths or quackery about chiropractor. So,
Yeah.
my father had to go to the chiropractor to get his leg was going numb. And he went to the chiropractor and they fixed it up and
Wow.
realigned the nervous system. And he
Hmm.
said, "You got to get X-rays before you go." But he loves the chiropractor, and
Wonderful.
maybe you
I
could
love hearing
dispel
stories.
some myths because there is some negative stuff going on about
Absolutely. It's
chiropractors.
like any other profession out there. Unfortunately, there's some bad apples. Germany has an interesting history with the Heilpraktiker profession and their licensure and autonomy and things like that. We're working as a profession very hard to get legal standing and our own autonomy in these countries to be able to hold each other to those professional standards. So I'm not versed in all the specifics on all the countries. I've worked in many different countries as a chiropractor. I lecture internationally on this topic. I'm very passionate about it. One of the biggest misconceptions I think is that your bone goes out of place, and maybe your father felt like something was pinching off that nerve and his leg was falling asleep. That would actually be a surgical referral in most cases, if that, because that nerve is very important and it's very soft, and you have a very heavy bone that's just crunching on that thing. That wouldn't be something that a chiropractor would necessarily help with. But when I can put motion into a joint that is not working and functioning well, it resets that connection between the brain and that part of the nervous system. And the body is capable of healing far greater things than we're led to believe in many instances, because the people who are telling you that you need them are either selling a drug or a surgery. And a lot of times, just some lifestyle changes, maybe going and seeing a chiropractor is something that can help if it's the right type of a disorder. but it's not so much that I'm putting a bone back into place. That's not the popping sound you're hearing, is that I'm straightening things up. They call it an alignment or something like that. It's not so much of an alignment. It's actually a dynamic concept. I'm putting motion in a joint that hasn't been moving before. And sometimes it pops, sometimes it doesn't. That pop is just nitrogen gas being released from the joint space, and it'll build up again in 20 minutes. It'll pop again. That doesn't really tell me if that joint is stuck or if it's moving properly or not. And the reason I care about that joint moving, or the spine in general, the only reason I care about spines is that's what's housing the nervous system. And I'm a nervous system doctor. I'm really not a back
Mm.
doctor or a neck doctor. I just care about how that nervous system is communicating with the brain and the body. And if it's a small brain and body, like these little tiny minutes old babies, that's even better, because there's a lot of adaptation that can happen. There's a lot of stem cells floating all around. There's a lot of good stuff that's waiting to happen in a body like that.
And what about the X-ray one? You must get X-rayed before you go to the chiropractor.
That is a really hotly debated topic
Mm.
internationally and everything. I think that depends on what is going on. Sometimes x-rays are very necessary, they're warranted. I've practiced in offices with and without x-rays. I've been out in the middle of, the Alaskan wilderness, and x-ray is not an option. So there are other ways that we can figure out what's going on. If I'm worried about the integrity of the skeletal system of the bones that I'm about to move, or there's a possibility that they've formed differently or that they're restricting the motion, definitely helps to have x-rays or images, MRIs and things like that. But there's other ways that I can verify joint motion, and x-ray is not going to show me how much a joint is moving. That's what my hands are checking for.
Mm.
And so sometimes, yes, I'm grateful for x-rays and I use them. Other times I need to know more about how things are moving, and what's the muscle doing, what's the skin, is it hot, is it swollen, what's going on in that area besides things that x-rays would show me.
Mm. It sounds like you've been in a lot of places. Where's the wildest place you've been? Was that during your learning?
Yeah, actually, my undergraduate studies was in international business. So I was working in Middle Eastern cultures. I did a lot of social entrepreneurship work. I was really blessed to work in Polynesia. So I was down in the Tuvaluan Islands,
Mm.
all over the South Pacific, basically, and having really interesting conversations even now with these countries about their healthcare systems that are so heavily based on drugs and surgery, when it's really hard to get drugs or surgeons to these locations, just because they're so remote. And so a chiropractor with his hands and with a table can go out and address a lot of these general, I mean, 80% of the human population at any given time has a complaint that a chiropractor could help with, low back pain or a headache or something like that. And we're really underutilizing chiropractic for all of the other parts of what we've discussed, the digestive stuff, the nervous system magic. And I think once the world taps into that potential, we're going to have a big shift in how we view health and medicine and healing worldwide, because more chiropractors are going to be able to help with some of the things that medicine historically hasn't been able to help with.
So what's your wildest chiropractor story?
Oh boy, let me think. The reason I got into chiropractic was my little niece, when she was born, and I remember first adjusting her in a little isolette, a little incubator, and to reach in there with a tiny little premature baby, the cutest little thing in the world, and just, I mean, you can barely fit these pinkies right on those atlas bones. And with NICU babies, and I've worked on a lot of premature babies who are in pretty complicated medical straits. They're always hooked up to these monitors, and I can see how their oxygenation levels are, what their heart rate is doing. And so
Mm.
when I'm aligning those little tiny bodies, I'm doing that adjustment, and I'm just praying that something good is happening there. And you just put all your positive focus and intention on that, and you watch those monitors just change to, positive oxygenation levels and slower heart rates, and things that show you that their body is back at ease and it's ready to grow now. And there's so many times that I've been on the front row to these miracles that are happening. It's not because of something I'm doing. I'm just turning on that nervous system, and it's doing what it is designed to do. And so those little monitors showed those miracles happen all the time. And those are probably the craziest experiences, because there's always a little part of me that's like, okay, is this even doing anything? Am I helping someone somehow? And
Mhm.
every time something amazing happens, it just reminds me, hey, this stuff works. So
That must be really rewarding.
I love it. I love what I do.
That's
And never in a
great.
million years thought that I would be writing a book or anything like that. I didn't think it would be a bestseller. I just wanted to get the story out there so I could have something to hand a patient when they ask me all these millions of questions.
Yeah, you need to write more books. And
Well,
this is
thank you.
just the beginning.
I
This,
think
yeah,
this is the beginning of something great.
at least
So,
3. You got to write at least 3. So this is number 1. You got 2
well,
more mandatory.
I'm working on another one. It's going to be a little bit before that one's ready, and
Okay.
we'll have
You
to
have a
see how this
working
works.
title yet?
I do, but I'm not ready to release it just yet.
Okay.
There's a lot of steps I need to go to first legally to protect
Oh.
myself from how our American system is currently set up. So that'll be interesting to see how that works.
Well, let me know. We'll do. I'd love to have you back for that
I
book
would love
too.
to be back. This is a great option to let people know what's going on in this part of the world.
So you mentioned, is that who was your favorite author? You mentioned a guy already.
Yeah, I mentioned Dr. Bruce Lipton. He
Mhm.
wrote The Biology of Belief, brilliant cellular biologist with Harvard, background and training and things like that. Very much discusses some of my passions and hobbies. Dr. Stephen Myers, another great inspiration for me. He wrote a book called Darwin's Doubt
Hmm.
that talks about neo-Darwinian evolution and molecular biology, things that are in another life I would have just fallen asleep to. But as I kind of dive into this stuff, it's fascinating to see. He's a big proponent of what they call the intelligent design hypothesis of, versus kind of creationism versus Darwinian evolution. And it's
Okay.
very
Yeah.
easy for me as a chiropractor to get behind that, not necessarily on a theological scale, but just saying there is an intelligence that is creating and organizing a body and it lives in the nervous system. So I'm focusing on, and I'm one of maybe 12 people that's ever done any serious dive on the history of the evolution of the nervous system in the fossil record. But
Oh.
you look at the earliest forms of the nervous system, 555 million years ago, there was an explosion of creation and organization that happened in how our bodies are put together. Well, shrimp bodies, I guess, and trilobites and jellyfish and things like
Mhm.
that. But since then, there's been a very noticeable speeding up of how we adapt to our environment as a species. And so from 555 million years ago until about 1890, this nervous system just built itself and organized itself without really understanding until in 1890, the 1890s, we started to have awareness of how our nervous system works and how we can adjust that nervous system to get an evolutionary advantage. And so only the last 120 years or so have we really taken advantage of speeding
Hmm.
up that process.
You
So
did a deep dive on that, right? So you need to go on Huberman's podcast next. You know that
right.
doctor
Yes,
from
Dr. Andrew,
Stanford?
that guy has some pretty amazing ideas. And yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully we get some invited to hear back from some of these. There's some amazing conversations being had out there with the likes of him and Jordan Peterson and some of these just brilliant minds that are talking about things that, man, if I just glean 5% of that conversation, I'm feeling like I'm pretty enriched by what they're
Yeah.
talking about.
One of
So
my favorite podcasts too.
really,
So yeah. I mean, you got to prioritize nowadays because there's so many. You can't listen to them all. So
yeah, that's what I do when I'm driving or working out or anything like that. I do love fiction. I listen to a lot of fiction works. I think that kind of gives my brain some balance. It lets it not be so rigid in my thinking. I can step back and kind of recalibrate things. Gregory David Roberts, he wrote Shantaram, which is an amazing story, kind of autobiographical, writing. And they just recently made a movie about it. But that his prose and the way he puts words together is just absolutely inspirational.
what's his
So
name?
Gregory David Roberts is the name. So he writes about an outlaw, basically a fugitive that joins the Indian mafia in the slums of Bombay in
Ah,
Kolaba.
and what's the name of the movie?
Shantaram is what's called Shantarama.
Okay, I'll look that up.
Yeah,
Thank you. If you
that's
don't mind, I'll go
no,
off topic here and we'll do some grab
sure,
bag questions to wrap it up.
super.
So, my favorite question of all, if you could eat dinner with anyone, past, present, or future, who would it be?
Whew, that's a tough one. There is there's a lot of people. I don't know that I would narrow it down to necessarily just one person. Recently, I've been very fascinated with Stoicism, and I think Marcus Aurelius, one of those writers, or Cicero, Seneca, some of those classic philosophers of Stoicism. Just fascinated by how they think. I think it'd be great to have conversations with them around the philosophy of Stoicism and things like that. Um, some of the founding fathers of my country, they had some great philosophies as well on government, on freedom, and I would love to pick their brains on where we're at now, and
Oh
people like
yeah,
Franklin or George Washington. Can you imagine talking to them about
revive
breastfeeding and
them.
medical
Yeah.
autonomy?
Well, the joke. We got to put copper wire around them because they're spinning in the grave so fast they could
We
generate
could power.
electricity for the
Yeah.
whole country, man.
That's brilliant.
That's another topic, my friend. What's
So,
in your pockets right now?
you know what? I don't carry much at all. Um,
Oh,
I
no
don't have
cool
anything in my
chiropractor
pockets today.
weapons?
No chiropractic weapons, surprisingly. Um, yeah, I carry a little rock just to remind me of kind of grounding
Okay,
occasionally. It's kind of a weird thing.
fair enough.
Usually keys though. I try not to keep my phone on my person, my cell phone. I think
Mm.
those EMF waves are not healthy for us. So
Oh, another great topic. Another great topic.
I'm one of
Yeah,
those people.
I want to get that new operating system from Edward Snowden that you could put on a Google phone, I think, but I don't want to buy a Google phone to do it. But okay,
Right.
I'm on a tangent. Forget it. Okay, what do you have a morning routine?
I do. And it kind of varies throughout the week depending on
Okay.
what the demands are that day. But normally consists of waking up. I do some meditation, listen to scripture and motivational, podcasts or things like that.
Which
Um,
one?
Yoga and things. So usually I just listen to scripture, just recorded scripture from the Bible
Hmm.
or some other religious texts. I love the Quran as well, and Torah. So I listen to a lot of different religious texts, the Bhagavad Gita sometimes. Um,
But is there a podcast or do you record them?
no, there's an app that I have that I can just
Oh,
listen to
cool.
my religious texts and similar ones. I think having those affirmations and kind of waking up the divine creative energy first thing before you open up your inbox or get on your phone is paramount. And then
Cool.
I usually go to the gym. My practice partner, he brilliant fitness programmer, so he writes my workout routines for me, and I go and hammer out one of those, come back for a good breakfast, and then I begin my work day at about 10 a.m. right now. So
Nice, nice.
yeah.
Okay, so what's the one question you wish people would ask you?
I think we kind of touched on that. I love it when I tell people that I'm a pediatric chiropractor and their first question, and it's a very logical question with how we've always presented ourselves as a profession, is why would you ever adjust a baby?
Mm,
What are you hoping to accomplish there?
mm,
And I do kind of the same spiel that we talked about here, was talking about the supremacy of the nervous system
mm.
and how important it is that that thing be functioning well and ordered and organized, and not in that protection mindset, but in that growth and that abundance mindset. And so that's where I love telling people, and I see the paradigm shift sometimes if they're open to that, of, well, maybe chiropractic is not just low back pain and headaches. And if I say I'm a chiropractor, people say, "Oh, I'm glad I don't need you." I'm like, "Well, you do have a nervous system. You might if you knew what I knew." So
Yeah,
I love having that conversation to just, well, why would you ever adjust a baby, or can you actually adjust a pregnant mom during pregnancy? I love that one because I'm like, yes, and there's so many benefits to doing that. So
cool.
I'm pretty passionate about that topic, obviously.
Yeah, great, great. Yeah, it sounds really rewarding what you're doing. I can tell you're into your job, and it's not a job; it's your calling. That's great.
Life, yeah, I
Yeah,
love it. Thank you, Eric. It's a
yeah, yeah. I can see that. I really, it's really infectious. It's great.
passion. Good.
So, what's
I
on the horizon for you?
I am working right now on getting the Audible version of this book out there. I think a lot of moms are way too busy to sit down and plow through a paperback, copy of what we've discussed. A lot of interest in the e-Kindle and things like that, but there again, you need the e-reader and you need some undivided attention time, and that's just hard to come by nowadays. So if I put out an Audible version of this book, I think a lot of moms would be able to have access to it while they're working and working out and doing all the things that we do in our day to day. I'm thankfully having a lot of interviews like this with podcast content creators, speaking engagements. We have book signings, book events. We did a book launch last month at the place where I wrote this book down in Arizona. So that was fun. My best friend and my business partner of many years, we're actually building a chiropractic clinic and a gym in the next little bit, and we'll have a very strong emphasis on pregnancy and pediatric in that, as well as just healthy lifestyle and things like that. So
Nice. So
yeah,
where can we reach you?
um, our website is starvingbabies.com. Pretty easy to remember.
Wow, starvingbabies.com. That is
Yeah.
so cool.
So,
Right
yeah,
on.
so you can go there. The website is kind of a landing page at this point. We're building in a lot of the other speaker features and things like that over the next little bit. There are some online resources that I'm working to put out as far as preparing for birth or birth plan, and all of those types of things are going to be on the website. But I'm also on as many of the social media channels as I can be at this point. I have a Patreon page that we just launched. But you can always email info@starvingbabies.com or go to the website. The book is on Amazon and probably will be there for quite a while. We just launched a free Kindle campaign, and we were giving away a lot of copies of the book there. That was a big promotional thing, and so we'll have some promotional opportunities here coming up soon with the holidays and New Year, New You, all that kind of excitement. So.
But you see how well your title works now, starvingbabies.com, starving babies on Amazon. I mean, that's great. So
Yeah, I think it's I think you're right. I need to hang on to the title. I need to have a better attitude about it.
okay, man. It's been
Yeah,
great talking to you. And yeah,
likewise.
oh man, you can't tell us the name of your next book. Well, you've got to come back then for the next book.
We definitely will. That'll give us something to talk about next time. It's probably going to be an equally love-hate relationship with that title if I go with the one that we have right now, the working title. So that'll
All
be
right.
an interesting one. It's been a very warm reception to starving babies, and I'm hopeful that
Mm.
continues to drive this conversation and things there. I welcome any opportunity to talk to anyone about the topics here. I know they're emotionally charged a lot of times, but it's just time to empower parents with the information that they need, and then support them as they navigate all of the complex politics and the pressure that comes with birth and breastfeeding. And we just need to support each other. This is a tribe where we can offer the next generation something better. We can keep these babies connected and return to the way that nature intended for us to do this. And that's what I'm passionate about right now.
Awesome. All right.
Thank
Dr.
you for your
Kaleb
time.
Valdez, thank you for your service, sir. And you keep doing what you're doing. And I look forward to seeing you the next time.
All righty. Thank you, Eric. Have a good one.
Okay. You're welcome.